Well, for more, let's bring in Joseph Downing in London. He's a senior lecturer in politics and international relations at Aston University. Thanks so much for speaking to us. France is a country with little taste for political compromise and collaboration. Bearing this in mind, who, in your opinion, will be France's next prime minister? I mean, what's the most likely scenario here?
It's really, really difficult to tell, right? So, in sort of typical terms, given the election outcome, we would probably see in other countries where the political system is not quite so polarized, we'd probably see Mélenchon as the kind of leader of that bloc, be in pole position to become kind of the second in charge of France. However, I'm not quite sure if that can happen. Why? Well, because I think he's too far to the left and he's made too many statements, controversial statements around things like the war in Gaza, around, changing completely the economic outlook of France, for Macron or for people elsewhere in the coalition to be comfortable with him in that role, which leaves the field really quite wide open. The problem that the left bloc has is they can unite around a single issue, which is to keep the National Rally out of power. But they don't really agree on very much else, right? You've got a very loose grouping there of, centre-left, hardcore, sort of, the inheritors of France's sort of communist party that want the nationalisation of industries and all kinds of things like that. And then you've got other kind of more ecological left type of groups. So the field really, really is quite open, and it's really going to be interesting to see how the compromises that have to be struck are struck over the next couple of days.
So you talk about the left, but I just want to delve into it a bit further because the left coalition, the NFP, has managed to join forces in record time, but is now obviously still scrambling to put forward a leader to represent them. It claims it will offer one of their candidates for the position of prime minister, but can this strategy succeed, especially, as you mentioned, amid all the internal rivalry and disagreement present?
I mean, it can, technically, on paper, but whether it does or not is quite difficult to say. The real problem here is what happens if it doesn't succeed. Now, the stakes are really high, right? Because the last thing that France needs or wants is to go into another election cycle. And that's one of the kind of key issues here is that actually on both sides, compromise may be necessitated by the seriousness really of the political crisis that France faces.
And the far-right National Rally finished in third place, despite many predicting it would come out on top. What's the future for the party? Where do they go from here?
Well, I mean, that actually suits them, to be honest with you, right? Because their entire legitimacy and their entire strategy has been successful because they've not held power in any significant way. Yes, they have at the local level, but they haven't governed nationally, so they haven't been tarnished with the allegations of corruption and incompetence that the centre-left and the centre-right, nor the sort of allegations of Macron being a president for the rich that the centre has faced. So, to be honest, it actually suits them quite well. Where does the party go from here? I would say continuing down the road of mainstreamisation of the party, so pulling it away from its kind of fascist origins continually. And we're also likely to see an increased role for Jordan Bardella, who in fact is a fresh face, who's not tarnished by being part of the sort of Le Pen dynasty that's dominated this party since its inception, and who, genuinely does come from a poor suburb of Paris, right? Who, when he speaks about people being marginalised, when he speaks about poverty, when he speaks about these issues in France, he genuinely has experienced it. And I think we're going to see a shift with the party more towards him, which I think for the long term is quite worrying because I think he's much more likely to be elected. A, I don't think France is ready to elect a female president, and B, he's not tarnished by connections to, the Le Pen dynasty and the fascism that often came with early on in the National Front years.
And what should we make of Emmanuel Macron's open letter to the French people? He's now obviously viewed as much weakened following that snap election gamble. What could be next for his Together movement?
Well, that's the other problem here, right? Is what is Macron going to do to really ensure that there's a legacy for his movement? At the moment, it's way too tied up with him. right? And it's personalised around him. He's made efforts to bring in Attal to be a sort of future face of that movement, but so far that's been pretty unsuccessful. Attal's quite unpopular. He doesn't have the same sort of blue collar credentials that Bardala has, although he's another young man and a fresh face on the French political scene. And again, so that is another aspect of uncertainty. And really, the key take home message I would say here about the future of French politics is about uncertainty. And the problem is, uncertainty is not good. And we can see that with, the panic of the bond markets and the financial markets around the possibility of a far-right win. And I think what we're likely to see is just a continuation of uncertainty, really, in France as we lead into the next presidential election cycle, which is only a few years away.
Right. Joseph Downing from Aston University, thank you so much for your very interesting analysis and for your time.
Thank you.